This opening, this crossroads, operates as an invocation to think again about the stories we tell about the struggles for decolonization in the past.
The idea of the workshop was to bring together scholars, artists, activists, performers, students, and community members to share ideas and knowledges about one particular moment in decolonization in the Caribbean between 1968 and 1988, and to think about what that might mean in relation to contemporary debates about decolonization here in Canada. What we wanted to do was to kind of look at that period through the lens of performance and to see how looking at it through the lens of performance in its broadest sense might allow us to reflect on different aspects of the moment than had already been discussed.
Cabinda Benguela, Lobito, Cachito, Teixeira de Souza, Luanda. Angola is the baby of New Africa. Dead heroes, Spaniard, Indonesian, Chilean comrades rise again. Angola is the baby of New Africa.
Where are your monuments, your battles, martyrs? Where's your tribal memory? Sirs, in that great vault, the sea. The sea has locked them up. The sea is history.
The books are indicative of the thoughts that we are building upon, the work that has come before us, and the work that we will continue to build into this world.
Some really interesting presentations on stuff that is happening now, talking about particular methods of work, particular approaches to knowledge production through performance that enable us to sort of break with Western epistemologies that disconnect mind and body.
What the Juve Popular Theatre process is about is uncovering what seems submerged or what may be submerged. It's the idea that when you look at the sunset or you look at the sunrise and you think you know what's there. But the minute you say, there is a beautiful sunrise, you're cut off from it.
The notion of yard is centered on secrecy. I said community, but I want to play that against the idea of secrecy, of conspiracy, the way in which the yard traditionally was the space in which we could do our own business. We could get together and do our own thing. Yes? Right? That's what the yard was. And we call that in Trinidad convoi.
We're also able to have some personal reflections on what the period meant and some kinds of intergenerational dialogue between people who actually lived through it and people who have only been told stories about what happened. So it was interesting to have that mix and also to look at, some of the more autobiographical accounts of what happened.
I really appreciate and love the papers and thoughts and questions that both Brian and Bernardo have left us with their papers. And they've discussed first the cultural networks that Cuba has forged with other Caribbean and African countries in the service of decolonization.
In his Freedom Dreams, Robin D.G. Kelly maintains, in the cultural products of social movements, in the reflections of activists, we discover the many cognitive maps of the future, of a world not yet born. I'd like to close by asking the panelists to speak to the cognitive maps of the future they see in their research.
These thinkers offer an understanding of revolution and therefore decolonization that extended beyond questions of simple national liberation, and instead framed revolution as a fundamental reordering of social life as a key mechanism for reconstituting the political.
Erna Bradbury is one of Jamaica's leading novelists. And at a time when there were very few Jamaican novelists, she was producing a series of novels which were extremely innovative, drawing on religious and spiritual traditions, drawing on kind of psychological questions of identity and race and gender.
Erna Brodber's talk tonight is titled After the Looking Glass, Black Space and Emancipation. Please join me in welcoming Erna Brodber.
I left elementary school and the fastness of rural life with the sense that the world had many people of different physical types, but that mine, black skin, hair like coconut coir, was the most beautiful. That I was somehow connected to the continent of Africa, where there were powerful artists and the English had fought them and stolen their creations. That through no fault of these not beautiful people, they had historically been ruled by people who did not look like them, people who stymied their progress and lived values contrary to that which they preached and what was right.
That for the first time in Jamaican society, there was a feeling that people call it raising of social consciousness.
That's how I came up with the Afronautic Research Lab, how I tried to reframe the archive.
Exploring this idea of what are the legacies we carry and what are the legacies we leave behind. Yeah, yo, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yo, yeah.
When you think about the past, the reason for thinking about the past is to figure out, what you want to do now and what sort of futurity you want to imagine. And and a lot of the history of that moment is disappearing as the people who made that moment die. And so it's pretty urgent to be able to address the gaps and silences and to be able to continually produce knowledge from those memories in the present.
All of this movement that you found, this electricity, this flexibility, potential for story. As you walk through the space now,